Good advice.
And welcome to 4 fabulous weeks of Costa Rica. Now, there is a lot of material that we'll not get to, so you've seen the trifold out in the hall, and then Susan did a great job with more pictures here, so anytime you wanna just soak it in and get more than we've got, it's there. I will tell you about how this trip came about and about our mission coworkers. Susan Fromkees will do the last sort of 15 minutes about the garden and the community in the garden and the green team. And then next week, Tori and Betsy are gonna talk about the elements of UBL's work that relate to gender justice. Joel and Patty are gonna do the third week about the current state of Costa Rica, and the last week, we are gonna ask the big question, what's next? So, let me go back to this. On the campus of UBL, there is a stand of bamboo, and it is planted in a circle, and the inside of the circle is clear, so you can go inside. So this is a picture that Tori took if you're inside looking up. So you can get all kinds of metaphors out of this if you want. So I'm gonna do sort of the seeds of the journey. During the pandemic, the Presbyterian did a Zoom series called Mission Engagement 101. They introduced us to a lot of our mission coworkers throughout the world, but they also did the history of mission. And you're gonna hear this theme throughout today. In the past, as you know, the good was often attended with damage. In the colonial era, the directional flow was top down. So state-sanctioned priests or missionaries subdued and converted by force the people of color they encountered. So Christian mission was viewed as actions taken by the powerful on behalf of the needy. So we would hear this, and even sometimes from the PCUSA today, our colonial past. Today we don't talk about missionaries, we talk about mission co-workers, and it's an ideology of companionship, cultural humility, and co-development. So we don't go anywhere unless we're invited, and we work alongside. So that was the main lesson of this series that the Presbyterian did. And then some of you may remember in 2023, we actually in this forum did 6 weeks, and we Zoomed with the Presbyterian office in Louisville, and then with our mission co-workers in Lebanon and Niger and Jerusalem and Costa Rica. And we also had 2 people from Broad Street come, and they talked about their experiences in Peru and Malawi. And one of those speakers was Patty Nussel, who came with us to Costa Rica. So you'll meet her later. Okay, why Costa Rica? It's obviously the closest to the people that we also have a connection to our Presbyterian. We first met in October of 23, and we actually had 20 people interested in the trip. We ended up with 6, and we started meeting monthly in 2024, and we used this book that was mentioned in the previous slide to guide us. Again, free congregational mission. We wanted to make sure that this was not a selfie mission, all about us, and that it was really God at the center of our mission. We had 2 goals, one to see what God is doing in Costa Rica, and also to see how we might have an ongoing relationship with our mission coworkers. And you were going to learn over the next 3 weeks that there was a third reason we were there, which was revealed during our visit. We applied for funds from the Permanent Funds Ministry and from the deacons and were generously granted money from each. This is Mark Hare, Jenny, his wife, to the right, and their two daughters. And Tori, what are their ages, do you remember?
Like 15 and 13?
Yeah, not bad.
Mark is from Amesville, Ohio, so this is our Presbyterian connection. His father was involved for over 30 years with the Coalition for Appalachian Ministry, and his mother, Catherine, is well known to PW. He's been working with Presbyterian Mission since 1997, and he's been in Haiti, Nicaragua, and Dominican Republic. He and Jenny came to Costa Rica in 2020. They're associated with UBL, and they serve on a team that focuses on climate justice and ecological sustainability. We didn't spend a lot of time with Jenny, but she's also a mission coworker and has worked as a community health facilitator. We did get to visit with the daughters. They ate meals with us and traveled with us. And this is Carla Cole, and she organized and shaped our journey. I think she's brilliant. She began her ministry in 1986 in Nicaragua, and she served there for 8 years, then went back and got her PhD at Princeton Theological Seminary and came back to missionary service in 2000. And she's been at UBL since 2013. She is professor of history, mission, and religions at UBL and a mission coworker. Now we're going to talk about mission in Costa Rica. In 1891, the first Protestant mission service was established by somebody named Cyrus Schofield. And David, are you here? Because he is famous for a reference Bible that bears his name. This mission was non-denominational, evangelical. Workers were not paid. Now, this is very important, at least to me. Their guide was Mark 16:15. Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to the whole creation. The directive was preaching the gospel, not social outreach. And in fact, the Presbyterian Church got in trouble in Guatemala because they were running a hospital. And this was not the gospel. So the second movement was the Latin American mission in 1921. And this is set up by a man named Harry Straken. And he set it up in San Jose, Costa Rica. Now he was traveling around the rest of the Spanish-speaking world setting up missions. His wife, Susan, who stayed in Costa Rica in San Jose, she organized and directed a farm, a hospital, and an orphanage. So you can already see the focus is going from gospel to include now social concerns. And she's one of our heroes in the story. She set up the first class at the Women's Bible Institute, 1922, which was the start of UBL. And it was interdenominational, so any Christian. And UBL has always had female students and female professors. The next year, 1923, a group of men from Nicaragua asked to be admitted and were. And for many years, this was a Bible institute for men and women. In the 1940s, they changed the name to Latin American Biblical Seminary to say it was now an institution of post-secondary education. 1975, the first PCUSA mission coworkers became associated with UBL. It became a university in the 1990s. And then the building that we were in was established in 1999, the buildings. Since the pandemic, they have been virtual, which actually has allowed them to reach 14 different countries. So it's been a plus. I want you to I'm telling you all my little things that I learned. It is ecumenical. So nuns can be sitting next to lay people, sitting next to pastors. It is also contextual. This was a new word for me and became very powerful for me. They are asked to think about their theology from the context in which they work. So if they are working with indigenous people, if they are working with communities of African ancestry, if they are working with women on the street, this is the context through which they seek their theologic response. So contextual resonated with me and was one of the other things I picked up. You can stop me anywhere along the line. The other thing, in the 1970s, UBL adopted Latin American theologies. How many of you have heard of liberation theology? Good. This was something, well, the people on the screen. Okay. This is a theologic approach that emphasizes the liberation of the oppressed. And we are asked to say why, look, see, then consider, and then how do we respond? So why are people poor? Then what does God say? And then how are we to act? Liberation theology developed in the Catholic Church in Latin America in the 60s. And it says if we call ourselves Christians, we are to care for the poor and vulnerable. Now, John Paul II and Cardinal Ratzinger, that we all know as Pope Benedict XVI, criticized this movement because they said it was aligned with communist ideologies and it was too political. And despite this, it influenced political and social movements across Latin America. And the person I know associated with it is Archbishop Oscar Romero. If you remember, he was assassinated while serving Mass in El Salvador because he became a symbol of resistance against military regimes and human rights. Pope Francis, the first Latin American pope, has drawn from these ideas, particularly in his advocacy for economic justice and environmental stewardship. So, very strong connection. So, again, one of the things I took away from this visit was there is this tension in global mission and in our Christian faith. Are we to focus on the preaching of the gospel of the suffering in the here and now, with the reward of the kingdom of heaven? Or do we understand the gospel as a call to respond to the world and care for the poor and vulnerable? And not just care, but ask why and how. And UBL has chosen to address the challenges facing women, indigenous groups, and underserved individuals, and to care for creation. Questions so far? Thoughts?
You're doing great. You're doing such a good job.
Just a gesture though,
I don't do that in church. All right, now the map. Take a look at this. Because obviously it's bordered by the Caribbean Sea on the east, Pacific on the west. To the north, we have Nicaragua. To the south, we have Panama. As you can imagine, immigration is an issue. It's huge. Costa Rica hosts many refugees, mainly from Colombia and Nicaragua. As a result, an estimated 10 to 15% of their population is made up of Nicaraguans. And in 2016, the country was called a magnet for migrants from South and Central America and other countries who are hoping to reach the US. And we're going to talk about the influx of refugees from Nicaragua in another session, so this is a theme you're going to hear again. We've talked about migration. Okay, what are the biggest, what supports the economy in Costa Rica, do you think?
Tourism.
Yep, agriculture and tourism. The main products are bananas, coffee, sugar, beets, and we're going to talk about pineapple production in another session because it's critical. Although Costa Rica is one of the most prosperous nations in Central America, 20% of the population lives below the poverty line. Most Costa Ricans identify with a Christian religion, with Catholicism being the largest. Catholicism is the official state religion according to the Constitution. But at the same time, the Constitution guarantees freedom of religion. Currently, Catholics represent 47% of the population. 19%, now this is an interesting thing I want you to keep in mind when we talk about the evolving global mission. 19% are evangelical Christians. The other mainline Protestants, only 1%. And most of those evangelicals are Pentecostals. Okay, that's interesting. Now, what do you see? And they are serving communion. There are only 7 Presbyterian churches in Costa Rica, and they are don't work together. They're very independent. At least the one we visited was quite small. This is called a Place for Everyone Presbyterian Church. They focus on feeding children. We had a meeting there one evening, and then we came back for the Sunday service, and Joel was invited to help serve communion. And they have 3 collections. One is food, rice and beans. Another is a normal collection as we do, passing the plate. And the last one is coins for their children's programming. So this is a community we'll talk about that now is very strongly Nicaraguan because of the migration. So they have universal, first of all, the Constitutional Conference in 1949 disbanded the military. There is no standing army. There is universal health care and universal public education guaranteed in the Constitution, although the current president considers investment in education a populist measure. But right now, universal public education is guaranteed in the Constitution. Primary education is obligatory, and both preschool and secondary school are free. And there is a portion in the Constitution that of their GDP that must be dedicated to public education. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Same-sex marriage has been legal since May of 2020. Costa Rica was the first Central American country to legalize same-sex marriage. Now, there are 3 buildings, major buildings, on the campus where we were. And this statue is at the entrance of the Education Administration Building, and it's titled Ella, E-L-L-A, which means she. And there is in October of 2022, UBL celebrated 100 years of providing theological education. So this is a symbol of the dreams of UBL. And the plaque says, poor, indigenous and Black, mixed and white women have access to theological education. This sculpture is the culmination of a campaign that was entitled "A Million Women's Names Building Our Dream." It started in 1995. And what they did was if you could give the name of a woman who had been influential in your life and pay $1. And that name would be preserved and hopefully they'd get to 1 million. Well, they didn't, but I thought it was a fantastic way to approach raising money. And this is a reminder then to their dreams of UBL and what they stand for.
So Beth, before you get off the picture, what's going on with one of her hands in the terror?
One hand is down and one hand is holding
Bible.
Bible. Oh, thank you. This is my photograph. Joel has a better one that has the whole thing. Sorry, you.
Literacy learning for women from the very beginning.
Wish I could sit there. So there are 3 buildings and each one is a different architectural style. This was our dorm and we were on the 2nd floor. The 1st floor had a group that was of college students that were studying and they were coming and going on field trips, very loud. And, this is the administrative building and I'm sorry, this is my photograph. Joel has a better one of the whole building. But the statue, you can almost see right inside the doorway there as you enter. This is what we call the round building. To the left, you can see that bamboo growth. And then that is where all our meals were. And it was a huge open space in there. Quite lovely. I think that it was representative of Caribbean culture, the architecture. This is a dorm room.
This is my room. See how spacious it is?
She tidied it up for us. But it was this, small, single bed, and a desk and a chair, and a little sink, which was very important. And then we had a bathroom where we all had to figure out how to get hot water for shower.
But we did.
We did.
Except for stall 4 was a little iffy.
We'd always stand in the shower, can you get hot water? Can you get hot water?
There was no Bob Tullett. It was tough.
And this is a photograph going down the hill from UBL, and you can see quite dense housing below, and we had a gate. You had to get there was a little guardhouse up here that you would ask them to raise the gate so we could come up into the seminary. You can see the mountains in the back. There were always mountains, very beautiful. So this is, we were actually in the city of Cedros, and Susan will talk a little bit about that. And then we had no idea, as I've said before, what to expect. Those of you who've been on mission trips before, usually they focus on doing. Our doing was in the garden, but most of the time we were learning. And our day started at 7 a.m. with breakfast. And then we had 2 or 3 lectures every day. Often we worked in the garden first, and then we had lectures, and we debriefed at 7 p.m. And then we have an informal debrief in that, usually Tori's, because hers was the neatest bedroom, all sitting on the bed, talking about how the day had gone.
And laughing.
And we did a lot of laughing.
We laughed
Yeah,
a lot.
good, yeah.
We laughed a lot.
So I'm gonna turn it over to Susan, but before I do, any questions about any part that I have? Yes.
Lectures in English.
No, all in Spanish, but translated usually by Carlos, sometimes by Mark.
Okay.
Everything was in Spanish.
I would have thought so.
Yes,
You may have said this in the beginning and I missed it, I don't know. UBL, so is that like the whole, is that a regional thing? Is that unique to Costa Rica? How is that,
Okay.
where is their funding from?
well, UBL is Universidad Bíblica Latino America.
So, and they do serve potentially all of Latin America.
Right.
Central and South, yeah.
Right,
which
right,
is
and as
Latin
Beth
America.
stated, they are virtual now, but there's still a requirement that you come and do one term on campus. You can have the experience of being there for a little bit. And I'm sure that if finances don't allow or whatever, they can waive it, but the goal is to get everybody there for a term. They have, a few Mexican students.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly Central America is where they're located. The bulk of their students come from Central America, but all instruction is in Spanish. So, you probably want to have a really great understanding of Spanish to be able to learn at the university level, right?
But they also have Eastern European students as well. Now Carla is funded by PCUSA. I don't know where their other funding
The
comes
funding
from.
comes from, just like at a university here, through tuition and through alumni donations. So that's
But
how.
most are on scholarship. I think they
Yeah.
pay very, very.
They said their
little.
largest money right now comes from renting out the dorm rooms.
Facility, yeah.
Because they don't have, except for the ones coming to work, they don't have people staying in their dorm, or they had a lot of other little houses, so if they had, married couples, those are all rented out. And then the dorm rooms, like the college that came from Minnesota, the 22 students and stuff, they're paying for room and board,
We did.
Right.
just like we did, and that's a bulk of their income, is keeping those rooms rented out.
But to answer your question, it is
Yeah.
private. It is not part of a system. It's
Yeah.
freestanding, an independent institution.
It was my understanding, it's a major role of their college president to fundraise. The expectation is that Elizabeth, has many connections and will, and she's the rainmaker.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they have 150 students is what I remember. So it's small. It is, as you could guess from what I said, the most progressive of all Bible institutes or institutions like this in Central America, by far.
How many professors are there?
I think they're 5 or 7, small. But they teach multiple courses, of course. And I don't know if they bring in community speakers, possibly. They did not mention that. Good question. Anything else?
I just want to, we learned that,
You get to do this.
yeah, but this is her topic. But that they are one of 2 seminaries that women can attend in Central America. One of 2. So we met some of their previous students, current students, who are from countries where they're not allowed to attend seminary.
And remember, this started with 8 women, so it's just amazing.
Yeah.
1922, pretty radical. All right, Susan's gonna talk about the garden part, the work part,
A little bit, we're gonna overlap a little bit.
right? And we will overlap over the next couple weeks.
Yeah.
Because we sort of divided up the workload, but you need to put this on.
Okay, put it on me.
That's for yourself.
Oh, okay, I know that. Let's see if I can do it. Now what do I do?
Stand and look good.
Well, and not pass out.
Just pick a person you really like.
Like this.
Alright, we'll just say that's your snapshot.
Okay, so I have to look at the picture. Well, what I find funny is, she started with the bamboo circle, so am I. The bamboo circle, is the grove of bamboo in the central area, UBL, like we've learned. It's unique because she said, you can enter and discover the round area where you can think, wonder, and enjoy. As seen in other pictures, there was a female golden orb spider picture out there, who for some reason never moved. So every time you go in there, that spider would be in the exact same place. And then we learned there's a little spider way up above her. That's her husband. He's a teeny. So she was sort of stability too. You'd go in and you'd see her. But it became a very special place for me. At a lake. So we all could go in there and just have really quiet, reflective time. And waved, and it was just beautiful. So this was one of our green places. When we got there, we learned that when we looked on our schedule, we were going to be working in the gardens. So but the first thing we saw when we were getting there, okay,
Yeah.
oh, I did it this way. Okay, so, oops, too many. There we go. Okay, and there's some more pictures over here. A little history of the green team. In 2018, UBL began a journey of becoming a green seminary, searching ways to reduce harm to the environment and to begin practices that would help heal damages already done. Thus, the beginning of the Green Team. Since 2018, they've made a deep impact on how UBL functions. Over here, I have a picture of solar panels. So in 2019, UBL installed solar panels which produces more electricity than they use. Because of this and other projects, they became a Blue Banner ecological program. They get annual certificate of ecological sustainability, environmental stewardship from the country. They also are the UBL Green Seminary International certification. Another project, which this picture sort of goes to, in 2022, they installed a simple system for collecting rainwater and filtering it so that it was able to use for washing the laundry. While we were there, we witnessed this going to a whole new level. The huge water tank to store water was being installed. All kinds of big equipment was needed. So every day we would go and they were digging a hole to go here. Just need to clean this real quick because it'll leak it.
Good.
Oh, wrong way.
Wait now, it went dark.
Okay. Okay, I ruined this. Did I break it?
You may just have to hold it up to your mouth instead of clip it.
I broke it. Did I broke it? I broke it, of course. Oh. Just see this little wire sticking out going. Okay. So they kept working on this. And finally, it ended up in the ground, and this is our dorm right there. So now they went from a small tank to this huge tank. The weather there, while we were there, was in the 60s and 70s. It rained the first morning we were there, and it rained a little bit when we were on a walking tour. But otherwise, we had perfect weather. The rainy season is May to November, so approximately. So during the rainy season, that will be filled. So, totally. Let's see. The first garden we went to, the first morning, we met with some students, and then we had a tour of the first garden. And the first garden is called the Rocoto. I think that's how you pronounce it. Is that it? Yeah. Tori is our Spanish-speaking translator for us. It became a vegetable garden, and it's about 25 square yards. And then they had an additional area for composting. This was part of UBL's green team at the beginning. Our schedule said we would work in this garden, but we never did. And we discovered this green plant all across it is a plant that is used to feed goats when they cut it back. And then they'll use that garden for, after they cut that back, for vegetables. But it's not good for the vegetables during the rainy season. But this grows very well in the rainy season. But it's called Mukunda, and Mark, who was our leader for the green team, told us that he would be cutting it back the following week, because once you start cutting it, every time any of the sap that hits you will dye you black.
Ooh.
So he said you come back with black hands, black clothing. So when he was in Haiti, he had worked with this, and he had to cut it back because the people he worked with wouldn't touch it. So he was adapting, cutting that back. While we were in that garden, we started.
Does it have to be dried?
I don't think so.
Do the goats just?
I think,
dry it?
well, some places they grow it and the goats just eat it.
Okay,
Goats will eat almost anything.
well, that's what I thought.
Yeah, but here they didn't have a goat, so Mark had to be the goat. We met students and community workers, volunteers while we worked in the garden. As said, the university, UBL students must do community service as part of their graduation requirement. But also we had students from the University of Costa Rica. And the first morning we met two who were biology students at the University of Costa Rica. And they, let's see. Okay, well, that's no view. They are both interested in bats. So we had bat conversations. Another tie with some of the people that we knew in common, who were bat people. We had a lot of great meals. So we would work in the garden and then we'd come back and have a snack and coffee with the people we worked with. And then we would go to a class or so, and then we would eat lunch after that. They are constantly expanding their skills and knowledge, making the whole system richer and more full of life. And let's see, I skipped ahead, so. That's their context. They are part of a group, they now practice no-till market gardening. There are podcasts and books available that I've found online. Basically, they don't leave the soil bare in most cases because the plants protect the biology of the soil beneath. When they weed, they can make sure they are planting something to replace it. There are good weeds and bad. They don't want the ones that will go to seed and cause problems later. This is the thing, since 2021, they raise compost worms producing high-quality biodynamic compost. The red worms. So Mark is showing where the red worms live, and they use tires. And the little red worms live on top. So the California redworms are related to earthworms, but they aren't earthworms because they don't dig down in the soil. Joel is one of the people who know much more about the worms because I never worked in the compost area. Our second, so there's Mark with the thing. And there are the wormies. Everybody got they're little. So they're just little wormies in the compost. The second garden was the sunflower garden, and that's where we worked alongside the students and the Green Team volunteers. In 2022, they reached out to the local community, Cedros, and invited them to come and tour UBL, including the area that UBL owned next to the campus. And it was divided by a large wall. There's a picture out there with the sunflower, with the sunrise, a mural. It would become the community garden, which they contextually said belongs to the community. UBL owns the land, but the garden belongs to the community. It's 1,200 square yards of land, and in January they held an organizing meeting, and that's when things took off. 2023 started the 75 square yard garden in the form of a mandala, and it's basically mostly the herb garden. Now, this was me working in the garden the first day, and we learned, Beth and I learned 2 lessons. My first lesson was you don't sit on the bed because you're compacting the soil. So then I sat on the stool, and a little while later the stool broke, so basically I sat in the bed. And I still owe Mark a stool. You know, luckily it was cracked in several places, so it wasn't totally my fault. I gotta speed up. That became, and it had its own composting area. Sometime maybe you'll see a picture of Joel with a machete. I don't know what he was doing with the machete, but he was entrusted with a machete one day. So it became a productive vegetable garden with our workers, there's a student and one of the women who were one of the original organizers. They even had a little coffee tree. 3 of the women who worked, there was another one of our great workers, and he was brilliant in the composting, and his dog was the supervisor. And we had the coffee. We ate a lot of meals, but talking. So this is a group of women. 3 of the women who were the major people involved in the garden from the beginning, from Cedros, invited us and some other Green Team members on a tour of their neighborhood. We divided up into 3 groups. Each group went a different way to discover hidden treasures of their neighborhood. This was a really special time. To be invited to a person's home, each woman made a different dessert. So when we got to the house, you see there the plates there. There were 3 huge pieces or slices of desserts. And they gave us doggy bags towards the end because they were so big and they were delicious. Around the table, we shared our experiences of walking through the community. We had divided up into 3 groups, and we had students, there were us, and one of the 3 women was a leader. And Mark was with us, his wife was with us. And we were looking for what was special about their neighborhood. We weren't looking like, oh, this should be fixed or that should be fixed. It was what is special. And it really was a special event to share with these people. The woman, Gazelle, who, this is her home, loves bears. And she has a collection of bears, and she knew who the golden bear was. Jacqueline wasn't, and we said, oh, we come from the home of the golden bear. So she had bears all over the place. This is another place, a place for everyone, Presbyterian Church. We went there for the youth, and this is Joel, the pastor, and there's, again, the communion, and Kara being our translator, and there's the red pig. And the red pig, right there, is where you put what I would call the least coin type donations. Because this, they could put in a small coin as a as a donation. They got the green turtle on the wall was from a project. They got a grant from Coca-Cola, and they sent sea creatures, posters or something. They hung from the ceiling to do this program about the ocean, and they left green turtle. They wanted the green turtle, and Coke left them the green turtle, and they built the Yellow Submarine. So then everybody starts singing Yellow Submarine. So we were with the youth in a circle, and we did this hand clapping activity to get to know each other. And it was hysterical because some of us are not real coordinated and our hands would be going. But when it was your turn, you clapped and you told your name and you told something about yourself. And then you would call somebody else out. Luckily, we had name tags. So it was a way of getting to know the youth. This was Mark developed a program with the youth there called Creation Discipleship 2023. And the program gave the kids, the church is a place where they had the kids could be safe. Like we said, this is a very poor Nicaraguan immigration area. And it was a place they could learn things with Mark. And let's see, do I have any?
It's coming back.
That's the NP. But we ate dinner with them, we sat and talked at dinner, and then after dinner, we were in the circle and they talked to us a little bit with a little prying from Mark because they were all a little shy, but we learned that in their programs, they made 2 YouTube videos about the hidden treasures of their neighborhood. We learned from Mark that one of the major problems that they face, the youth, the boys, young men face, is the term machismo, which turned out to be a major problem that a lot of the groups that we met with was, young boy, be a man, quit school, go get a job, this kind of thing. So that's a big problem they face. They were in some of the workshops, and some of Mark's workshops produced soap, bread, kombucha, kombucha, something like that. And chias, the little, chia pet things. Well, they did chias. But we all each got a bar of soap that are really cute, and I meant to bring mine. So there was a lot of singing at the church. On Sunday, we attended church. We brought rice and beans, so there was a big basket, that's where you put that. That was sort of, they give the food out to the people who need it around the area. It's their food pantry. And then you have to pass the basket, get money like we do. So there were a lot of similarities between this. And it was just really interesting to see how generous they were to this Nicaraguan community and to learn about the people, the ministers there, the adult helpers, and what they had gone through. So, and this, okay.
Yeah, be in front of your.
Da-da-da.
But you've got 8 minutes before church.
Yeah, so this is the end. So this was what, we got this picture of the herb garden where we were working. And we learned, the other thing that Beth learned is you don't break, when you take it out of a pot, you don't break it apart like we do here, where all the roots are all bound up. Because the roots, the soil is so porous and everything, you could damage the roots. So you don't sit on the bed and you don't take plants. Those were our 2 big lessons of gardening.